Welcome to Right from the Bible. We continue now in our study of the book of Ruth, beginning in chapter 3, verse 15. Verse 15, also he said, bring the veil that thou hast upon thee, and hold it. And when she held it, he measured 6 measures of barley, and laid it on her, and she went into the city. And when she came to her mother-in-law, she said, who are you, my daughter? And she told her all that the man had done to her. And she said, these 6 measures of barley gave he me, for he said to me, go not empty unto thy mother-in-law. Then said she, sit still, my daughter, until thou know how the matter will fall. For the man will not be in rest until he have finished the thing this day. Love it. Love it. Boaz means fleetness, or one who does things quickly, or we would say is diligent. Proverbs actually has the antithesis. Just as vinegar to the teeth and smoke to the eyes, so is the sluggard to the one who sends him. In other words, you don't want to be around an individual whose diligence is not well known. Boaz is the kind of guy, he's going to wake up in the morning, he's going to be like, you know what? I got to get this done. I have to get this done today. I've just lost a night of sleep over it. I've been thinking about her for quite some time. Now she wants to have me become the kinsman redeemer. I'm not going to let this rest. You want to know what I find interesting about this portion right here? And understand something, that we are getting a very narrow narrative of something that is occurring over a lengthy period of time. And that is this: Naomi knows his character well enough to know he's not going to let this slip by. He's going to jump right on it, and he's going to make sure that it is done today. Now, I know we've talked in the past and we've discussed periods of time that may very well have slipped, but there is no period of time slipping here. He's not thinking about it for a week, a month, get back to me, Ruth, I'll give it some consideration. None of that. He's probably like, where's that crow at, man? Where's that rooster at crowing in the morning so I can wake up? I've already sent her off. She's got food. And notice what he also said regarding the food that he gave her. He says, he sent it with her to her mother. He is concerned for her well-being as well. He's the kind of guy you want to be related to, quite frankly. He's the kind of guy you'd want to be related to. 3 o'clock in the morning, you're broken down on a dark road. You pick up the phone and call Boaz. He's like, I'll be right there. He's just that kind of guy. He is just that kind of guy. And this is the individual that you would want to be married to your daughter-in-law. Let me, if I can, take a moment and reflect our memories upon, go back to Ephesians chapter 5. Ephesians chapter 5. And let's pick up in verse 25. Ephesians 5:25. Husbands, love your wives even as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for it. You see Boaz giving himself now for it. We're going to find out a little bit later that he's giving himself more than you could even imagine. And gave himself for it. Verse 26, that he might sanctify and cleanse it with the washing of water by the word, concerned with the virtue of his bride. Jesus cleanses and washes us. What did God do in Ezekiel chapter 16 to Judah? I found you in the field and I cleansed and I washed you and I clothed you. Right? Did you know that when you accept Jesus Christ as your personal Lord and Savior, did you get clothed in a robe of righteousness? You're clothed in a robe of righteousness. You could almost say this: instead of being just spiritually dead, you were also spiritually naked. Verse 26, that he might sanctify and cleanse it with the washing of water by the word, that he might present it to himself a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that it should be holy and without blemish. You see that? Boaz is concerned for her virtue even on the night when there was nothing that was done wrong between the two of them. He says, I'm sending you off early. Take this food, take it back to your mom, but you need to get out of here because people could misinterpret what is going on here. Paul tells the church of Thessalonica, he says, stay away from the appearance of evil. And so the idea here is he's just protecting, constantly protecting, constantly protecting. And guys, that's what we have to do. You're just constantly protecting. And God forgive us for the time that we didn't. For we wrestle, I'm sorry, I'm getting way ahead of myself here now. I'm way ahead of myself. Okay. Verse 28, so ought men to love their wives as their own bodies. He that loves his wife loves himself. It becomes an expression. You know how much I love my wife? I love my wife deeply because I love myself. It's kind of a humorous way to look at it. But the idea here is this. If you're willing to protect yourself, then how much more do you protect her? Especially if she's finding herself in a position where she's the weaker vessel, where she's the one who needs to be guarded and all these kind of things. You have to be there. You step up. Sometimes it takes on a very practical sense. Sometimes it takes on a very spiritual sense. When you lead and guide spiritually, what have you, that's it. The guy takes the hit. The man takes the hit. You don't hear that very often today. The man takes the hit. We were in Fort Lauderdale one time, had our bikes, and we were like, man, this is fantastic. We're cruising by the beach. Katya and I both love the beach, and we're riding by the roadside and what have you. And we're starting on our way back, and here comes this guy, and he's inebriated. He's got a gallon of wine. He's got a gallon of wine that he's holding on to while he's trying to ride his bike. And the area becomes very narrow between where he's going to pass and where we're capable of passing. And he gets a little bit nervous, and he actually bumps Katya, not enough to knock her over, but enough for him to drop his bottle of wine. And he says he's not happy about this. You know, he's already intoxicated and he's not happy about this. And Katya stops and I stop. And all I kept telling Katya to do was keep riding your bike. Just move away from this whole situation. Move away from this whole situation. Because I wasn't going to have her in the middle of this. And it didn't turn into a physical altercation. He was able to understand my reasoning. The man takes the hit. How often does the man take the hit? The man always takes the hit. And let me say this, and this is something that you are not going to hear from pulpits. You have to take the hit, even when you have to be the spiritual leader and tell your wife, no, we're not doing that. That is not happening the way that you just suggested. It is happening this way. Be the man of your home, be the spiritual leader of your house, and do things God's way. And that is exactly what Boaz is doing. That is exactly what Boaz is doing. It's a beautiful picture. But do you notice that you see that picture mimicked in God and to his people, and you see that picture mirrored in Jesus to his bride? Did you know that God has a wife? Do you know who God's wife is? God's wife is? No, God's wife is Israel. Israel and God have a son. Do you know who the son is? Jesus. And Jesus is seeking a bride. That's why when you take a look at Revelation chapter 12, it says, and the woman brought forth a child, and the child was taken up into heaven, and she fled into the wilderness because the great red dragon was going to go after her. It's a picture of what was going to happen as far as the persecution that takes place in the latter days. God always refers to Israel as his wife. That is the reason why in the book of Hosea, when Hosea is told to marry a woman of ill repute, Gomer, And Gomer then leaves and goes back to that previous lifestyle that God tells Hosea, go and retrieve her because I'm going to retrieve my adulterous wife. And who's the adulterous wife? It's Israel because they keep turning their back on God. What is Jesus intending to do to his bride? We just read it here in Ephesians chapter 5. That she would be spotless and blameless and without blemish. You see that? He's seeking to protect her virtue. God is trying to protect the virtue of his wife Israel. Boaz is protecting the virtue of Ruth. Remember I told you before? I love the word of God when it explains something in detail and then you get a chance to see it lived out. You get a chance to see it lived out. And we need to ask ourselves this question. I don't know if you're up for a challenge, but if he can do it, I can do it. You ever think of things that way? If he can do it, then by God's grace, I can do it. Especially when it is that God desires us to do that. And that's what Paul's explaining in Ephesians chapter 5. And you thought we were just going to hop, skip, and jump through Ruth. I guess we'll move into 4. So now, chapter 4, verse 1. Then went Boaz up to the gate and sat him down there, and behold, the kinsman of whom Boaz spake came by, unto whom he said, Ho, such a one, turn aside, sit down here. And he turned aside and sat down. Now, to do things at the gate, and I had told you last week, remember Proverbs 31, that the husband is known at the gate, that her name, because of her reputation in Proverbs 31, is known at the gate. You can well imagine that everybody knows about Ruth at the gate. The gate is where things occurred. The gate is where things occurred. And I'm going to write these down because I'm going to fire my way through Ruth chapter 4 and you guys are just going to have to go hungry. Or I'm going to have to face the tears of my wife who wants me to continue the story because she looked heartbroken last week. But we're at 51 minutes. I'm going to continue on here. It'll only take another hour and a half. In Genesis chapter 19, verse 1 through 9, you'll get the story of Lot. You'll get the story of Lot when the 2 angels come into Sodom and Gomorrah and they seek to grab him up and get him out of town. And the accusation against him, who has made you a judge over us? Because it'll tell us that he sat at the gates. That he sat at the gates. In 2 Samuel chapter 15, verses 1 and 2, Absalom, after he gets restored back under David's good graces, would go to the gates and he would tell the people, what are you doing here? Well, we got to go talk to King David. He has to judge over our situation. Oh, if I was only able to judge your situation for you. And he turns the hearts of the people towards himself because while he is there at the gate, he begins to step into the role of judging on the basis of that. Proverbs 31:25, which you'll remember, he is known at the gates. Genesis chapter 24:60. Genesis 24:60, you'll see that when Isaac ends up going to, let me retract my steps. When the servant of Abraham goes and finds Rebekah and comes back, she is given a blessing, and the blessing from her people to her are, may your children rule the gates of their enemies. May your children rule the gates of your enemies. So I want you to see this picture that he's not just at the gate, but this is where things happen. And the reason it's where things happen is because the scripture tells us in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, let all things be established. And so if you have 2 or 3 witnesses that can establish all things, you can well imagine what it would be like if you had the entire town aware of what occurred. Then you wouldn't have this he said, she said kind of conversation. Well, he said he was going to pay me that much for the car and he only paid me this much for the car. They said they were going to do this and they only did that. And everybody knew everybody's business. So you've heard me state this once before. All right, there was a young lady that used to work for me back in California. And one time I heard her make this statement: "Why you got to be all up on my business?" And I've never forgotten that. But in these kind of towns, everybody was up on everybody's business. And so here's the situation unfolding. Back to the narrative. So then when Boaz up to the gate again and sat him down there, and behold, the kinsman of whom Boaz spake came by, unto whom he said, Ho, such a one, turn aside, sit down here. And he turned aside and he sat down, and he took 10 men of the elders of the city and said, Sit you down here. And they sat down. So you can, this picture, he's like, hey, the guy's coming like into the town. Hey, Boaz, how you doing? Oh, no. I need you to come over here and hang out. Oh, cool. I'll come hang out. You got some extra coffee or something like that? You see the old guys around here sitting in front of now today, if it was here, they'd be doing it in front of a gas station. But they're sitting there, they get the elders of the town, they bring them over here. Now all of a sudden this thing's unfolding. You can imagine if you're the guy that's walking by, you're thinking to yourself, where's this headed? We got no issues. So he's now saying, in verse 2 again, and he took 10 men of the elders of the city and said, Sit you down here. And they sat down, and he said unto the kinsman, Naomi, that is come again out of the country of Moab, sells a parcel of land. I want you to pay close attention. Now I'm going to bring it up, of course, but pay close attention to the way he's communicating to him. And he said unto the kinsman, Naomi, that is come again out of the country of Moab, sells a parcel of land, which was our brother Elimelech's. Now that word brother doesn't mean that they were brothers, but brethren, part of similar family. And at some point in time, there is a divide that ends up occurring. And the reason why we know that is because Elimelech is an Ephrathite, which means that he is from Ephraim, but Boaz is of Judah. Is that important? Oh, you'll find out that's very important. Verse 4, and I thought to advertise thee, saying, Buy it before the inhabitants and before the elders of my people. If you will redeem it, redeem it. But if you will not redeem it, then tell me that I may know, for there is none to redeem it beside thee, and I am after thee. And he said, I will redeem it. Do you like the way that he kind of posts this? It's kind of like a matter of factly. She wants to sell the land. You're the next guy in line. If you don't want to buy it, just let me know. I'll take care of it. It's almost kind of like a nonchalant thing. Look, we're just trying to do what's right by Naomi. Not going to have no skin off of my shoulder. No, I'm okay. I'm okay with this. We're good. You want to buy it? Yeah, you know what? I think I'll buy it. Wouldn't hurt to have a few more acres, be able to grow some more stuff. I think this is going to work out. Yeah, thanks for letting me know, bro. I'm going to buy it. Then said Boaz, What day you buy the field of the hand of Naomi, thou must buy it also of Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of the dead, to raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance. Oh, wait a minute. Somebody just threw a curve. Whoa. I thought I was getting it from Naomi, who we all know is on the older side of things. You know what will eventually end up happening? What would happen if the kinsman redeemer steps in, buys the land from Naomi? I want you to think your way through this for the things that you will know, that you already know. What happens if this gentleman, who we don't know the name of, makes the decision that he's going to buy the land from Naomi? And it's just Naomi. Can Naomi have children? No. What happens when Naomi dies? Oh, the land belongs to me. Wow, this sounds really good. Thank you for letting me know. Thank you for giving me the inside scoop on this. Naomi's old, can't have any more children. I'll take care of her until the day she dies. No skin off my nose. That's a piece of cake. This is working out great. This day was wonderful. I was just walking in here to get some donuts and coffee, and now I'm going to buy some land that's eventually going to come mine. Thank you. Can I get you lunch? Are you hungry? Oh, by the way, I just forgot to mention. Then Naomi may be so old that she can't have any more children, but Ruth, the Moabitess, you know the Moabitess, you know the woman that came from over the other side of the tracks, that woman comes along with the package, and you're going to have to raise up children under her so that when you have a son by her, it will now go back to them. Oh. What happens if I raise up a child to their dead and then I don't end up having any children after my name? Oh. Ooh, tables could turn real quick, couldn't they? Verse 5 again, then said Boaz, what day thou buyest the field of the land of Naomi, thou must buy it also of Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of the dead, to raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance. If you want to cross-reference Leviticus chapter 25, verse 23, they're following this process. And the kinsman said, I cannot redeem it for myself, lest I do what? Mar my own inheritance. Redeem thou my right to thyself, for I cannot redeem it. Have you noticed that Boaz isn't concerned about his inheritance? Is it starting to look like maybe Boaz really is in love with Ruth? Verse 7, now this was the manner in former time in Israel concerning redeeming and concerning changing. For to confirm all things, a man plucked off his shoe and gave it to his neighbor. And this was a testimony in Israel. Now, if you were to go to Deuteronomy, and we're not going to for time's sake, because I am going to wrap up this book. Deuteronomy chapter 25, verses 5 through 10. What you will end up finding out, and you're going to want to take note of that, young lady. What you're going to end up finding out is that if the woman's husband dies and she is in the home of, or the broadened home of that family, she can walk up to a brother and go, oh, by the way, you're it. Okay, you're it. Your bro died, and you're going to be the one that steps up and takes on that responsibility. And if he doesn't, she takes him before the gates. She demands that his shoe is pulled off of his feet, and she goes and spits in his face. And it is a shame to him. And it doesn't make a difference if he has another wife. How many of you are like going, what? What? That's how important God thought that land needed to stay in that family. That's how important God thought that the land needed to stay in that family. This situation isn't exactly the same as, because this other individual is not a brother of. And so he's taking the sandal off, but the insult of the spitting in the face and all of that before everybody is not. It just becomes a testimony. It's kind of like saying, you got a written contract. Dude, I got your sandal. Don't tell me you didn't do it. Let's just check to see if it fits your foot. It's kind of like the Cinderella story in reverse, right? You know, and that's the idea here that's taking place. So this is very amicable between the two, because Boaz is now willing to take on this responsibility. He doesn't have a problem. I don't want to make this guy look bad. Just take off your shoe. Let's follow this whole process that we're doing it. And I'm going to skip off to my wedding to Ruth, you know. So this was, at the end of 7, this was the testimony in Israel. Therefore the kinsman said unto Boaz, buy it for you. So he drew off his shoe, and Boaz said unto the elders and unto all the people, you are witnesses this day that I have bought all that was Elimelech's, and all that was Chilion's and Mahlon's of the hand of Naomi. You see, now he's applying all of that back to them. Still belongs to them. I'm telling you, I'm buying it as the kinsman redeemer. It's not going to permanently be mine. It belongs to them. And I will do my best to raise up a child. Verse 10, moreover, Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of Mahlon, have I purchased to be my wife. That's the golden ticket. He could care less about the property. He's a wealthy man. He's got a great reputation. He's got more than enough. The jewel was Ruth. There was a man who gave all to buy a land when he realized that it had the pearl of great price. He gave everything to buy you with his blood. You see that typology, that parallel? How much does Jesus really love us? I think we don't have any concept. Verse 10 again, moreover, Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of Mahlon, have I purchased to be my wife, to raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance, that the name of the dead be not cut off from among his brethren, and from the gate of his place. You see that? You are witnesses this day. And all the people that were in the gate and the elders said, we are witnesses. The Lord make the woman that is come into thine house like Rachel, and like Leah, which two did build the house of Israel, and do thou worthily in Ephratah, and be famous in Bethlehem, and let thy house be like the house of Pharez, which Tamar bare unto Judah, of the seed which the Lord shall give thee of this young woman. These people have absolutely no idea just how much that blessing was going to be fulfilled. And here's the other thing that you have to recognize that is important. We have already talked about their willingness to obey the law of God. Boaz to Ruth, Ruth to her mom, the kinsman redeemer, and the entire process that is taking place. I don't have time to take you to these passages that I would like to bring to light, but God does not like it when you overlook the weak, the widow, the fatherless, the poor. God does not like it when people take advantage of those individuals. And Judah is, it's stated in Isaiah chapter 1, it's stated that they get judged eventually and will be carted off as one of the other reasons they get carted off to somebody help me out. They get carted off by Nebuchadnezzar to Babylon. Goodness gracious. They get carted off to Babylon for that reason. God does not like it when the poor are mistreated. So what do you think the townspeople are thinking in the back of their mind? Because 15 years ago, we were being judged by God. Somebody's got to step up as the kinsman redeemer. B-O-A-Z, Boaz, Boaz, Boaz. These people are cheering right now. They're like, Boaz, Boaz, he's our man. If he can't do it, no one can. And so they're just into this. They are absolutely into this. And so here comes all of the blessings, all of the blessings. Now watch this again. I'm going to pick up in 11. And all the people that were in the gate and the elders said, we are witnesses. The Lord make the woman that is come unto thee like the house like Rachel and like Leah, which are what? The two primary daughters of Laban, where the 12 tribes come from. So they're referencing back to that, which two did build the house of Israel, and do thou worthily in Ephratah. That is the same as the area of Bethlehem, and be famous in Bethlehem. And let your house be like the house of Pharez, whom Tamar bare unto Judah. Now you need to understand that this is another name that ends up in the lineage of Christ. And if you were to go back now to Genesis chapter 38, that you would find the entire chapter. That's how much emphasis is placed upon what happens between her and Judah. The entire chapter is her experience. She marries one son of Judah. He does wickedly. God kills him. And the next individual steps up and he does what he can not to make sure that she ends up with a son that would be recognized by the first brother. And God hates that so much, he kills him. So there's another son that's so young, he can't marry Tamar at this point in time. And he says, listen, go back to your father's house. When he gets old enough, you can marry him and then raise up. And she goes, well, he's gotten older. Now he keeps getting older. And for goodness sakes, he's still not giving that boy to me. So she ends up looking like a prostitute, goes down to the town. He comes into the town with his buddy. And he's like, hey, man, it's been a while. So he goes and walks up to her and he goes, hey, what would it take? And she says, well, you need to give me a goat. He goes, he says, will you accept a goat for this? And she goes, sure, but do you have the goat? No, I'll have to send it later. She goes, well, give me your signet ring, give me your staff, give me things that are directly associated to you that can be identified. And so they go in and they have a relation, and then he leaves, and then he sends his friend back with the goat, and she's gone. And later on, what ends up happening is she's found to be pregnant. So they say, guess what? Tamar's pregnant. Look at what Tamar did. Look at how evil Tamar is. And he says, you know what? So you know what Judah says? She needs to get burned. Burn her alive. Just burn her alive. So she says, oh, he'd probably be interested to know who got me pregnant. So here's his ring, here's his staff, and here's his other stuff. And they show up and they go, look, we can not only get her, but we can get the guy who ends up getting her pregnant. And they say, well, who is that? He sees all the stuff and he's like, oh, that's my stuff. That was me. And you know what he says? This is what he says. She is more righteous than I, because she deserved the right of a kinsman redeemer, and I robbed her of that right. And even though the means by which she goes to make sure that that is fulfilled may be sketchy, the reality is she deserved it. Do you know that she has 2 sons by Judah? Did you know that? 1 Chronicles chapter 2. Pharez and Zerah. So let's continue on now, because they're reflecting back now on Pharez, whom Tamar bare unto Judah, of the seed which the Lord shall give thee of this young woman. 13, so Boaz took Ruth, and she was his wife, and when he went in unto her, the Lord gave her conception, and she bare a son. And the woman said unto Naomi, blessed be the Lord, which has not left thee this day without a kinsman, that his name may be famous in Israel. And he shall be unto thee a restorer of thy life, and a nourisher of thine old age. For thy daughter-in-law, which loves thee, which is better to thee than 7 sons, has borne him. And Naomi took the child and laid it in her bosom, and became nurse unto it. Wow. You want to talk about a turn of events? God's done this to me. God's done this to me. God's turned his back on me. God doesn't love me anymore. God has turned away from me. And now all of a sudden, boom, she is rocking her grandchild on her knee. Verse 17, and the women, her neighbors, gave it a name, saying, there is a son born to Naomi, and they called his name Obed. He is the father of Jesse, the father of David. Now we begin to see the importance of the book of Ruth that just so happens to get tucked in here. Because if you're reading through the entire Bible, you may be asking yourself, why would the Lord choose to put this story in here? Verse 18, now these are the generations of Pharez. Pharez begot Hezron. Hezron begot Ram. Ram begot Amminadab. Amminadab begot Nahshon. And Nahshon begot Salmon. And Salmon begot Boaz. Boaz begot Obed, and Obed begot Jesse, and Jesse begat David. And if you were to go to, and we won't for time's sake now, because I am definitely beyond, if you were to go to Matthew chapter 1, you will find that genealogy that leads all the way to Jesus. And if you go to Luke, who does it in reverse, you will find that genealogy that goes all the way back to God. And what we fail to understand sometimes in the midst of our lives, that those providential moments that we started the study of this book with, that just seem to be things that happen, may very well be the part of the storyline God wants you to fulfill in your life to his glory. There was a portion of the genealogy that needed to be understood to show that Jesus, who was necessary to come from the line of the tribe of Judah, a blessing that Israel would place upon Judah. May there never, ever leave an individual who carries the scepter come from between your loins. The point here is this. If Jesus is going to come not only as the Messiah, but as a king, he needs to come through the line of Judah. And we will find out later in other studies that he also has to be a son of David. And that's where the genealogy here ends. Have you ever heard it put this way? It's not his story. It's his story. And he is going to ensure the fact that things are going to turn out the way that he wants them to. And we are getting very close to a day in which we may very well see Jesus ruling and reigning. That concludes our study of the book of Ruth. Join us again as we continue on in our study through the Word of God, book by book, chapter by chapter, verse by verse, and may you continue to grow in the grace and knowledge of the Lord Jesus Christ.